everyone, and welcome to the third lecture of our talk series, Fundamental Human Qualities to Prosper in the Workplace. Our theme today is Mastering High Ethical Standards in the Workplace. My name is Lúcio Gustosa. I am a Master of Health Sciences in Canada, working with healthy aging, and I'm also a student of logosophy. Since this may be the first contact with the Logosophical Foundation for some of you, I'll briefly talk about the institution. The Logosophical Foundation is a school of human self-betterment, or self-overcoming, if you will. Logosophy was created by the thinker and humanist Carlos Bernardo González Pecote in 1930, and today there are study centers in South and Central America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. In North America, there are logosophy students spread throughout the US and Canada, with a logosophical center in Miami, Florida. One of the aims of logosophy is to offer resources for self-knowledge and self-betterment. Its method demands not to believe in what the author brings, but rather to experience what is studied and study what is experienced. This brings several benefits, including qualities to prosper in the workplace. Today's activity is part of the celebration of the 90th anniversary of the Logosophical Foundation, and for our talk today, we will have as speakers Adriana and Clementino. Adriana is an English teacher at Swinburne University in Melbourne, where she lives with her husband and her 2 children. Clementino de Mendonça is an Azure architect and DevOps expert with Microsoft. He lives in Austin, Texas, with his wife and daughter. Before we start the lecture, I want to quickly remind everyone that after the talk, we will share information on the upcoming activity, free courses, books, and more. I hope you enjoy the talk. And now, I'll pass the word to Adriana. Adriana, please.
Thank you, Lúcio. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here today talking about work ethics. Such an important thing in today's globalized world, isn't it? But what is work ethics? I think I can define work ethics as a set of values that guides us in the workplace, and really anywhere we are for that matter. At home, with our families, our friends, in every aspect of our lives. I'm sure some of you present here today have already heard or done some of those training modules at work. Well, I work for a university in Melbourne, and every 2 years, I have to complete several online trainings, like refresher courses on different things. And one of them is called Working Together, like refresher courses we've done before. And this one, Working Together, focused primarily on ethics in the workplace. I think these trainings are fantastic. They really do a good job. But sometimes when I make a mistake or if I don't act in a very ethical way, I wonder, what is it that these trainings are not teaching me? Or sometimes I want to do the right thing, but something happens inside me that makes me do something else or something I didn't want to do in the first place. Do you feel the same? Like there are forces inside your mind that work involuntarily? And then you have that awful feeling of regret? Or is it just me? So that's precisely what I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to focus on ethics in a deeper level and how to gain control over what goes on in my mind. Because ethics, at the end of the day, is the result of what I think and how I behave. Well, the university I work for has a contract with the Australian government. So we are heavily audited. Every year, twice a year, we submit paperwork for verification to check that we're doing what we're supposed to do. A few years ago, something interesting happened. One of the files selected for verification had an error. The teacher responsible for the file was called out and asked to write a report about it. She said she made a mistake, she admitted, and she refused to make any changes. The coordinator accepted her decision, and obviously the university received some recommendations on how to improve in the future. Although her file didn't pass, I think the teacher, her work ethics was put to the test. And I think for me, she passed with flying colors. And me being a teacher and mom, couldn't miss that opportunity. And at night, I brought it up at dinner time, and I showed my kids the importance of being true to yourself and admitting that you made a mistake, which isn't always easy. So that's why I said before, these values are really, they apply in every aspect of our lives, don't they? So what I'm learning with logosophy is that we all have the capability to make our own decisions in a conscious way. And when I say conscious way, I mean knowing exactly why we're doing certain things. This is the third live in the series. So if you've been following the other series, you will remember that the very first one spoke about thoughts, an interesting concept that logosophy is teaching me. If you haven't watched, I highly recommend. They're easily accessed on the website, logosophy.org. So through the acquisition of this special class of knowledge, not the one we learn online or from books and just one quick reading, no. This special class of knowledge I'm talking about comes with study, experimenting with what I study, and analyzing what I have experienced. And obviously, the more we do, the more we get it right. So practice makes perfect. So this whole process is called the logosophical method. And like with all sciences, there's a method. In our inner world, we have many things. We have these thoughts, we have feelings, we have the aspirations to be better, to help other people, be good human beings. But for the purpose of what I want to bring today, I'm going to focus primarily on thoughts. And I thought I should give you an example that I experienced a couple of years ago to show you how these thoughts operate in our minds. Yeah. So one day at work, I found myself in the middle of a conflict between two work colleagues. So I was literally in the middle of a crossfire. I had a colleague on my right standing, and I had another colleague on my left. And they started talking and arguing about something related to work. One of these colleagues got really upset and went back to her desk and wrote an email to our manager complaining about the other colleague. So the manager called me straight away to a phone meeting. I had to find a private room to talk, and 5 minutes later, I was having to explain what had just happened. So in a matter of minutes, I had to prepare myself for what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say, because whatever I said would have high stakes in this case. And that's when I started observing these thoughts, my thoughts, this mental world we all have inside, invisible, but just as real as everything else we can see. So the thoughts I had in my mind gravitating at that moment were, it's not up to me to judge or say who's right or wrong, or I'll leave that up to the manager. even though I could also see that one teacher was overreacting. It was really not that big of a deal, but the other teacher also had a part in the mistake. She was being nosy and jumped in the conversation. So I could see both colleagues had a part in the mistake, in the unpleasant situation, but they are good teachers, fantastic people, and I didn't want to damage their reputation at all. Um, so as I was speaking to my manager, I tried to be very objective. I detached myself completely from the situation, and I just told him with a very clean mind what had happened, choosing the words carefully not to imply any judgment. And all of this in a matter of seconds, of course, because that's how fast thoughts come and go in our mind. The manager heard what I had to say, and he said he was going to talk to the other teachers involved. The situation evolved, but I wanted to highlight my part of the experience and my involvement in it, and how happy I was that I was able to see all this happening and choose the best thoughts I wanted to go with, to make this choice consciously. And that's what logosophy is teaching me. I've been learning to see these thoughts in my mind and choose the ones I think will make me happier. So logosophy defines thoughts as autonomous entities, almost like other beings inside myself, which usually act independently of our will. Quite often, these thoughts are so dominant that they control our lives. And even though sometimes we don't like them, I don't want to be rude or judgmental or intolerant or indiscreet. They still control us. And we have that awful feeling of regret. Oh, didn't want to say that, or I didn't want to do that. Other times, these thoughts are good ones. They make us do good things and they bring us happiness. In this example I just gave, I was talking to my own thoughts. Yeah, it was me talking to me. But sometimes we have the influence of other people's thoughts and we use them without any reflections. So in this simple example I brought from work, I thought I was in total control of what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say. But unfortunately, I have lost a few battles too and said things that I regretted later. That's why I said before, practice makes perfect. And that's how I feel today. I feel more confident, more in control over my thoughts. So when difficult situations like this happen at work, I have a few tricks up my sleeve and I don't fall into the traps. So if a colleague does something rude or says something rude to me, I try to avoid telling other colleagues. I avoid criticizing what they do, how they do things. I avoid gossips at all costs. At lunchtime, we all sit together. I always try to think of a good topic to bring up into the conversation because I want to be a happy and a positive influence in the work environment. So these tricks are important so we can become more and more ethical each day. What about you? Do these experiences relate to you? Do you live experiences like this at work? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to tell somebody what had happened and that probably involved passing a judgment? Let's see what Clementino has to share with us today.
So hello, everyone. I will continue talking about what Adriana has brought, starting with the element of thoughts as autonomous entities, right? So a couple more experiences to deepen a little bit more or to take into a slightly different direction what has been brought so far. Well, first of all, we have to understand this is that ethics is usually about the correct behavior, but behavior is something externally observed, right? So the external correct behavior. What I mean by that is that taken to the extreme, you can see that ethics is applicable to many things, including the word etiquette, right? That small ethics or small ethos applies here too. Etiquette is about the correct behavior from an external perspective when you're doing, in social occasions and etc. As a matter of fact, when I came to the United States, I recall buying a big, thick book about etiquette. After all, when in Rome, do like the Romans, right? So I wanted to, learn what is exactly the slight differences that there might have been between etiquette between how I learned in my country of origin, Brazil, and how it was applied here. But of course, these are just the external, superficial elements, so to speak, about etiquette. Now, logosophy brings the focus on the internal, like Adriano was talking about, and like in other lectures, we were talking about the thoughts as being something that is alive, autonomous entities. So ethics from the logosophical perspective, they arise from our excellences of our inner being, our inner experience, our inner morals, if you choose to think about that. That is, if I feel and if I do my internal life in a better way, then the consequence should be a good ethics or good ethical behavior as a consequence. So ethics should be a consequence of things we do internally. A couple examples to illustrate that this concept. First experience is this. There was a friend of mine who I thought was, really good speaker, and I thought, well, maybe he could join our team. He very depth knowledge of technical items as well, and I thought, well, let me talk to him. Maybe he would be interested in applying to our team. I did, and he did apply. And then, to my surprise, a couple of weeks later, I received an email from the hiring team saying that I had this interview scheduled with this friend of mine sometime from there. Obviously, I immediately contacted them and say, hey, well, can't do this because it's a conflict of interest, right? After all, he's my friend, and I was the one that brought to his attention that this position was available. So they, of course, they immediately took my name off of it, and that was it. But think about the experience as a whole. What if I had second thoughts about it, right? To me, it was no doubts about it. You see, every year we have training in our own companies across the United States. Every company does that about conflicts of interest and situations where you have to take yourself out of a process because it will, there might be a conflict of interest. So the best thing for the company is for you to put yourself aside. So this is like a norm in many companies, right? Avoid conflicts of interest. And this situation, that situation, that other situation are conflicts of interest. This was one of them. But in my case, and I think like in many cases for many here in this that are listening to this talk, you might have thought, well, there was no doubt about it because, it came from an internal demand saying, well, this is just plain wrong, right? It's not just because the company was telling me that this was against company norms that I did it. It's more like I felt that that was the right thing to do. So this is a very good example that everybody can relate to about this external behavior coming from their inner feelings, inner ways of, seeing the world. It's similar sometimes to when we are, driving on a freeway and do you stay within the speed limit because it's the there might be the possibility of a cop hiding somewhere in the freeway, come and get you because you're speeding, or do you avoid speeding because that's the right thing to do, because you think it is the right thing to do, or you feel it is the right thing to do? Kind of a similar situation. So what would you do? Would you choose the best option because it's company policy, or because you feel it is the right thing to do? Now, the second experience is a little bit more complex, and will take us into a different direction of our thinking about ethics. So there was this friend of mine who was very fond of a certain professor at university because he had written a book about Aristotle's ethics. Interesting example about this because it's a book about ethics written by Aristotle. And it was a professor who wrote it, and he, according to my friend, he wrote it beautifully. So he was eager to work as an intern for the library of that school, so that he might have a chance, once in a while, interacting with that professor and talking to him, maybe even. But then, when he was working as a person who provided services for that library, he realized that that professor did not always act ethically. So, for instance, sometimes he would take books out of the library and not return them, and then claim later that he never got the book. Sometimes the professor would be talking about somebody else in a not very good tone, or not that flattering tone it should be, kind of a gossiping about somebody else. And then to my friend, this was really, really a disillusionment, because wow, the person who I thought was the champion of ethics knew everything about Aristotle's ethics, but here he is behaving like like that is just words on paper. And it might have happened that if this friend of mine did not have very good internal values himself, he might have had an inversion of will, where this kind of a bad thoughts, this disillusionment about the situation might have inverted the situation, and the thoughts might have just told him, hey, you know what? Forget about the norms. Everybody's a cynic. So very cynical from this professor to say something and behave in the different way. So stop worrying about being ethical, etc., so on and so forth. My friend did not do that. He had very good values, and that's why I'm a friend of his until today. But what about you guys? Have you ever been in a situation where what management says and what management does is different, doesn't match? Did you ever feel tempted to ignore company norms, company policy because of this, one or another bad example? Or did you always say no to those negative tendencies? How would you feel if a teacher did the same thing in a class to your kids, right? Do something, and then the teacher himself or herself doesn't do what they are saying. And the importance of observing your own thoughts here as autonomous entities is of paramount size, right? Because, as a parent, sometimes you're in the same situation. You tell your kid to do something, and then you yourself do something in the opposite direction. And as Adriana had mentioned before, sometimes we do this because thoughts, being autonomous entities, they will just go into their direction unless you are the person telling them how they should go for. And again, here's the importance of self-observation. Logosophy actually teaches that self-observation is one of the most noble exercises, to observe my own thoughts, to observe them while they're inside my mind. And while they're inside my mind, select those that will help me and help me help others to improve ourselves, right? To have ourselves as a yardstick. Not worry about everybody else's thinking, but rather about how do I think about this? How can I be more attuned to what I feel from a better perspective? How can I always have thoughts that will always lead us to help me and others to achieve better high levels of behavior, feel better, and also act better? Ethics could you could think about being us acting with the thoughts that we have inside of us. If I have bad thoughts, they will take us in a bad direction, therefore showing not very good ethics. But if you do have good thoughts, if we've made a point to select, and remember that this is an iterative process. You have some thoughts today, you evaluate them, and then later you might find, well, okay, well, this one he really should be improved. So thoughts, they also evolve, right? Do not try to strain yourself in trying to achieve a measure that is not achievable immediately, but rather set up a goal of observing internally your own life and trying to avoid those negative thoughts leaving your mind and doing harm and damage to others. So therefore, what I'm doing here is that I'm stopping my mistakes even before they happen. That's where this noble exercise of self-observation comes in place. It's us taking control of our own minds first, so that whatever comes after it, our external behavior, our actions, they're derived from those inner excellences, of this self-improvement. So that's what I had to bring today, and hopefully those reflections will help you, gain also some interest in, experimenting with those concepts yourself in your own life. So back to you, Lucio.
Thank you, Clementino, and thank you, Adriana, for sharing part of your experiences with us today in such a profound theme. For sure, Clementino, we all learn something useful for our lives, and it raises the interest in the theme for sure. So thank you very much, you both. Next Saturday, we'll have the last talk of the series. It will be on the values for balancing professional and personal life. As always, it will be a lecture full of experiences and tips on how to succeed in this topic. If you would like more information about logosophy or would like to be notified on the upcoming activities, or if you'd like to subscribe to one free course about logosophy, please complete the form using the link posted in the chat. You can also visit the website logosophy.org, where you can download many books for free and learn more about the method and the institution. Well, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for your participation, and we hope to see you next Saturday. Thank you, and bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.